What do killing goats with your mind and driving fast cars have in common? Well, if you said intensely focused concentration, then you'd be absolutely wrong, because telepathy doesn't exist. This is Movie Night. Hello and welcome to Movie Night. I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. Let's get right into our first film, The Men Who Stare at Goats. Released last fall as a comedy film, Goats starring George Clooney, Ewan McGregor, Kevin Spacey, and Jeff Bridges grossed nearly $50 million at the box office, despite being a total waste of everybody's time. The film is laughably supposed to be about true-to-life events, but there isn't a single moment that goes by in this movie where you're not thinking to yourself, did any of this really exist? The Men Who Stare at Goats is the apparent true story of Bob Winton, played by McGregor, providing his best attempt at an American accent, a reporter from Michigan who decides to fly to Iraq to get some excitement out of his life. Once there, he bumps into Lynn Cassidy, portrayed by George Clooney, a former soldier of the secret New Earth Army, a branch of the American Armed Forces that apparently existed, and apparently used telepathy and other made-up crap to apparently fight bad guys in a war. Jeff Bridges and Kevin Spacey play fellow soldiers in this secret army, but neither deliver a memorable performance, especially disappointing given their best actor status in the industry. The absurd and seemingly nonsensical storyline aside, Goats is listed as a comedy movie, and I laughed all of 2 times in this 94-minute suckfest. Sure, some of the writing is sharp and the movie keeps you interested, but only in the same way that the TV show Lost keeps you interested, by constantly giving you more and more questions without ever explaining why you should give a damn. The movie features a list of extraordinary A-listers, their potentials absolutely wasted in this film that provides them with no purpose or consequence for their actions. Besides suffering from mindless plot progression and unmotivated characters, The Men Who Stare at Goats features 0 antagonists or any real climax in the entire film. At first it seems like a promising and intriguing film that keeps you guessing. Unfortunately, the film never turns the corner, leaving you still guessing why any of this was worth your time. Throw in some hackneyed use of Boston's More Than a Feeling in the soundtrack and you've got what amounts to a bizarre and floundering film that only serves as a highly fictionalized account of some secret army stuff that doesn't really sound that realistic to begin with. This film wasn't all garbage though, with a few scenes that drew my attention and kept me entertained, if occasionally for the wrong reasons. As a whole, however, this movie never finds its footing, nor does it make any damn sense. So that's what I had to say about The Men Who Stare at Goats. I didn't really like it, but let's see what you had to say in the YouTube comments. The Randomness Go-Go wrote, "The Men Who Stare at Goats was very strange. I thought the acting was fantastic, but the writing was very hard to follow. I felt like I was trapped in the movie theater waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. 3 out of 10. DizKid95 wrote, "It was a good movie, although it lacked a good plot or characters you cared about. It was a funny look at military intelligence. 6 out of 10. Okay, now let's go ahead and rank this waste of time on the Rate-O-Matic. A 3 and a 5. Well, I thought this was a bad movie. Plain and simple, it failed at being interesting. I had to give it a 3. Collectively, you guys were all over the place, with some people recognizing the movie as a failure at what it was, and others praising it for its complicated plot and acting. Your results averaged out to an alright film. Moving forward now, let's take a look at The Fast and the Furious. Released 9 years ago, the original The Fast and the Furious not only launched the careers of nearly all of its stars, it was also a major blockbuster hit, spawning 3 successful sequels. Set amongst the seedy underground of an apparently large network of illegal street racers, the film was about Brian O'Connor, an undercover police officer who finds himself getting a bit too close to his mark, the king of the street racers, Dom Toretto, played by Vin Diesel. Paul Walker portrays O'Connor, an up-and-coming officer who is trying to impress his department heads and get a raise, but first he has to impress his fellow street racers. Before O'Connor is revealed as an undercover operative, the first 30 minutes of The Fast and the Furious are an exciting and educational journey into LA's underground racing gangs. But they're also void of any real substance or purpose. Luckily, the middle act of the film begins to introduce some much-needed conflict and plot. However, it's also at the expense of the aforementioned action and glamour that preceded it. Walker and Diesel do a decent enough job here, bouncing off one another in the film, acting as much as they're required to, but neither one is really challenged on an emotional level. In one of her first significant supporting roles, Michelle Rodriguez is even worse, mostly just grunting and saying some tough one-liners, while frowning for most of the film. As Dom's sister and Brian's love interest, Mia, Jordana Brewster is perhaps the lone member of the cast who really stands out in her performance, bringing to life an otherwise one-dimensional character. When the film isn't bogging itself down with unoriginal, undercover created dilemmas, and focusing instead on the car racing and action scenes, The Fast and the Furious really shines. Almost a decade old, these edge-of-your-seat sequences are still amazing orgies of sound and vision, expertly edited at a blistering nail-biting pace. Although the film does little to convince you that Vin Diesel is a good actor or that dropping $20,000 into a 1995 Honda Civic is a good idea, the movie does do a great job of providing some good old-fashioned entertainment. Nothing groundbreaking here, instead a fresh and gritty take on a well-established formula. And it pays off for the film. It's fun and exciting to watch. Well, that's what I had to say about The Fast and the Furious. Now let's see what you guys said in the YouTube comments. The Renkin wrote, some of the most over-the-top and ridiculous getaway and race scenes as well as some of the worst one-liners in movie history. But it's so bad it's good. 7 out of 10. Raphael 1991 Metal wrote, slightly predictable and fun action movie. Average acting and storyline with awesome action. Since you don't watch an action movie for acting, 8 out of 10. Well, you've heard from me and we've heard from you, so now let's kick the show into third gear and fire up the Rate-O-Matic for The Fast and the Furious. A cool and a great. While this movie was average and uninspiring in most scenes, the thrilling action more than made up for it. I gotta give it a 7. You folks mostly agreed with several of you claiming that the fast cars alone made this movie worth a 10. In the end, your scores averaged to an 8. Well, that does it for our full-length reviews this week. Now let's take a look at some shorter ones with some tweet critiques. No Username 215 wrote, Repo Man, great character-driven plot. I love the score soundtrack. Jude Law and Forest Whitaker are amazing together. An awesome 9 out of 10. Mace907 tweeted, Bounty Hunter was the same thing you'd expect from a movie about an ex-couple with a guessable ending. 2 out of 10. Well, that does it for this week's episode of Movie Night. Now let's take a look forward at the 2 movies we'll be reviewing for next episode, which will be the last episode of the first season of Movie Night. To end the first season of Movie Night with a bang, I decided to review 2 classic movies. One Ultimate Guy movie that I'm sure we probably all love, Rocky 1, and one groaner of a chick flick that I'm sure we probably all hate, Twilight 1. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what you have to say about these 2 particular films, so please leave your comments down below. That does it for this episode of Movie Night. I'll see you again next Wednesday for the final episode of Season 1. And until then, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thanks for watching Movie Night.